Hello everyone, thank you for joining me again and welcome to any new viewers. This is To The Point English with Ben. I'm Ben, and in this video I want to talk about vocabulary, in particular advanced vocabulary, because I know a lot of you are worried, especially those of you who are preparing for one of the more advanced English exams. You're worried that either you don't know enough advanced vocabulary, or perhaps you don't use advanced vocabulary when you need to in the exams. So in this video I'm going to give you some tips on how to impress the examiners in your exam and just how to use more advanced vocabulary on a day-to-day basis. But first of all, what is advanced vocabulary? Well, when we talk about advanced vocabulary, we're really referring to the less common words in a language. So it's quite possible that you can communicate and express yourself quite effectively without ever using advanced words or phrases or expressions. But if you want to be more precise and perhaps more sophisticated and more professional, it's really useful to have a wide range of advanced vocabulary. And of course, in all English exams, vocabulary is one of the marking criteria that the examiners take into consideration. And it's also really useful to understand the difference between passive vocabulary and active vocabulary. So passive vocabulary refers to the words, expressions and phrases that you know, that you understand when you read them or hear them, but you don't actively use them yourself. And whatever language you speak, whether it's your mother tongue or a second or third language, your passive vocabulary will always be bigger, so it will always be wider than your active vocabulary. And that can cause frustration for language learners because sometimes when you're speaking or writing even, you can't find or remember a particular word even though you know it. And of course in an exam context that can be even more frustrating. But that's completely normal, and you mustn't forget that your passive vocabulary is really important and really useful, specifically for reading and listening. So in those parts of the exams, your passive vocabulary will really help you understand and comprehend what the writer or the speaker is writing or saying. And in order to continue expanding your passive vocabulary, you should do what every teacher recommends, and I've recommended in many videos before. You should read a lot of articles or books, you should listen to podcasts, you should watch films, all in English. But importantly, take notes and use it or lose it. If you don't use the vocabulary, you will forget it. So write in English, little short stories or paragraphs, or keep a journal in English. And if possible, speak. So use the vocabulary in conversation if you have that opportunity. But it's really important that you continue building your passive vocabulary, because over time, a lot of those passive words will become active. And when we talk about active vocabulary, we're referring to the words you use in your speaking and writing. And this is the vocabulary that will be evaluated in your exams, in your speaking and writing papers. And this is where many students struggle because they get frustrated because they don't find or use the words that they know when they need them in exams. But the good news is that there are certain things you can do that will really help you out in your exams, as I said, in particular in the speaking and writing papers. But one thing that's really important to take into consideration when learning vocabulary for an exam in particular is that you don't actually need that much vocabulary. In the Cambridge English exams, for example, in the B2 First, C1 Advanced and C2 Proficiency, in the writing paper, you just have to write 2 short compositions. And with your speaking, for example, again in the Cambridge English exams, really you're only going to speak for about 6 minutes, 5 or 6 minutes in total, because the speaking paper lasts about 15 or 16 minutes. You have to divide that time into 2 because you're with your partner, and then subtract the time that the interlocutor is speaking. In the end, you don't have that much time to really demonstrate your level. So with that in mind, it's really useful, and I highly recommend that you just learn sets of vocabulary and remember these sets of vocabulary in the exam. So words and expressions that you can use in different contexts. And I can't recommend highly enough that you learn synonyms for some of the more common words, in particular adjectives. I see when I practice the exam tasks with my students, Students repeating the same word over and over again. For example, important. You hear the word important or very important repeated, and I see it in writings too. So if you can learn some synonyms and just remember by heart some synonyms for important and remind yourself in the exam to use those synonyms, you're really going to impress the examiner. So for example, with important, you can use crucial, essential, paramount, critical. There are so many synonyms for important. You don't need to learn them all, just learn a set and remind yourself to use them in the exams. Other examples with interesting. It's another very common word that comes up in the speaking exam. Interesting is fine as an adjective, but you want to try to use more sophisticated and impressive synonyms and not to repeat the same words. So with interesting, you have riveting, gripping, engaging, engrossing. All of those words will get you more marks than just repeating interesting all the time. And of course, the opposite is boring. So you can use words like dull or tedious. Or if you want to describe the place you live, you could say nondescript. Maybe you don't live in a particularly beautiful or quaint area, nondescript is a really impressive word. Now, I've made many vocabulary videos for this channel, some synonym videos where I look at some of the more common words and their synonyms. So I'll share some of those in the description to this video. And I've also made many videos on collocations, which is another area of vocabulary which examiners love. So I recommend that you learn a few sets of collocations that you can use in different contexts. You can use more basic collocations like to take a decision, or more advanced collocations like extol virtues. It's something you need to do proactively, expand your range of collocations for the exam and for real life, of course. These collocations are used a lot by native English speakers. Another area of vocabulary that examiners are really looking out for in the exams is cohesive devices or linkers. So these words and phrases which connect ideas and help with the flow, the cohesion of the text. So you all know cohesive devices, they're very basic ones like and, but, because. But again, I highly recommend that you learn and remember some more sophisticated, more advanced cohesive devices. So words like nevertheless instead of however, or albeit instead of even though or although, or furthermore, moreover. Again, it's just something to keep in mind. Try to learn and remember and use these types of words in your exam. So those three areas of vocabulary, so synonyms, collocations, and cohesive devices or linkers, you can learn before your exam. Just learn sets of vocabulary that you can use in different contexts in your speaking and writing. But to really get a high score, especially in the C2 proficiency Cambridge English exams or any high-level exam, you do want to use topic-specific vocabulary. And that's more difficult because there are so many topics that can come up in the exams that it's almost impossible to learn all the vocabulary that you need to use. So that's why you just need to be surrounding yourself with English, immersing yourself in English in the months coming up to the exam. Really with the high-level exams, you should have been doing that for a long time. If you feel that you have a C2 level and you can pass a C2 level exam, then English should be a big part of your life. But if you take my recommendations into account regarding the passive vocabulary and active vocabulary, you have a good chance of impressing the examiners and getting a really high score in your exam. If you need more help with your exam preparation, check out my online preparation courses, and I'll see you very soon for another video.